Mercy sometimes requires firmness. That might sound like a contradiction at first, but when you truly understand the depth of mercy, you begin to see the full picture. Mercy isn't always soft. It's not always about kind words, warm smiles, or open arms. Sometimes, mercy is found in the difficult decisions, in the uncomfortable truths, in the moments when the easiest path would be to stay silent, but the right path demands action. When Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ordered the killing of certain harmful creatures, it wasn't because he enjoyed harm, nor because he lacked compassion. This was the same man who spoke of a woman forgiven by God for giving water to a thirsty dog, the same man who warned of punishment for a woman who starved a cat. His heart was full of compassion for animals, for nature, for every living thing. So when he gave that order, it wasn't out of contradiction. It was a deeper layer of mercy, one that many overlook. Mercy in its highest form is not passive. It's not turning a blind eye to evil. It's not allowing danger to grow because confronting it feels harsh. Real mercy looks at the long-term effects. It considers the broader picture. If a creature, no matter how small, threatens lives, especially the innocent, the children, the vulnerable, then protecting those lives becomes an act of mercy in itself. Imagine a scorpion crawling into a child's crib at night. Imagine its sting bringing death before morning comes. Would mercy be to let it live, or would mercy be to act before that tragedy occurs? The Prophet chose the latter, and in that, he taught us that mercy sometimes wears armor. Sometimes mercy holds a sword, not to destroy for pleasure, but to protect with purpose. This is a lesson we all need today. We live in a time when standing up for what's right is often seen as harsh. When calling out harm is labeled as judgmental, but there is a kind of love that speaks truth, a kind of care that confronts danger, and a kind of mercy that isn't afraid to be firm. Parents show this when they discipline their children, not out of anger, but out of a desire to shape them into good people. Leaders show this when they make unpopular choices to safeguard their communities. Friends show this when they speak uncomfortable truths not to hurt, but to heal. This is the kind of mercy that doesn't just feel good in the moment. It builds a better future. The Prophet's action reminds us that peace isn't passive. It's not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. And sometimes, justice requires taking a stand. Sometimes, mercy means stepping in before harm can take hold. That firmness, rooted in compassion, is what true leadership looks like. It's what true love looks like, and it's what true mercy requires. Because in the end, mercy isn't about avoiding pain. It's about preventing greater pain. It's about choosing the harder path today, so others can walk safer tomorrow. It's about courage, it's about vision, and above all, it's about love in its most honest form. That's why mercy sometimes has to be firm. The Prophet acted out of protection, not cruelty. That truth is essential to understanding one of the most misunderstood aspects of his life. When people hear about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ordering the killing of certain harmful creatures, it can feel jarring, especially when he's known as the mercy to the worlds. But what they don't always realize is that his actions were never driven by personal hatred, vengeance, or cruelty. Every move he made was guided by divine wisdom, a deep sense of justice, and a protective love for humanity. The Prophet didn't act for himself. His life was never about personal comfort or power. He lived simply, gave generously, forgave often. He showed patience in the face of insults, kindness in response to cruelty, and love to those who wronged him. So when he made the decision to have a dangerous creature killed, it wasn't about destroying life. It was about protecting it. Certain creatures, like the black scorpion, weren't just unpleasant, they were deadly. They would creep into homes in the still of the night and sting without warning. Their venom could take the life of a child, an elder, anyone caught unaware. In a time and place without modern medicine, without antidotes or hospitals nearby, such a sting wasn't just painful. it could be fatal. And so the prophet acted. He gave a command to protect the people. That kind of protection required foresight. It meant recognizing a threat before it struck. It meant valuing human life so deeply that he would not wait until someone was hurt to make a move. That's not cruelty. That's love. That's leadership. That's responsibility. Think about the people we admire today. The ones who stand guard over our communities, who take action when danger arises. We don't call them cruel. We call them protectors. We call them heroes, because sometimes to protect the innocent, you have to make hard decisions. You have to act firmly. You have to choose the safety of many over the life of a creature that poses a real threat. The prophet's entire mission was about protection. Protection from ignorance, from injustice, from cruelty, from harm, whether it came from people, systems, or even creatures of the earth. He taught us to be kind to animals, yes. But he also taught us to be wise, to be cautious, and to take the necessary steps when lives are at risk. Protection is not passive. It doesn't always look soft. Sometimes it requires clear action. And sometimes that action can be misunderstood by those who only look at the surface. But the heart of it, the intention behind it, was always mercy. This kind of decision isn't easy, and the prophet didn't take it lightly. Every move he made carried weight. Every command he gave had purpose. And in this case, that purpose was the safety and well-being of his people. Because he loved them, because he cared, because he was not just a messenger. He was a shepherd of his community, a guardian. In today's world, we need to remember that true compassion doesn't ignore danger. It doesn't pretend everything is fine when it's not. True compassion confronts harm and does what it must to protect others. That's what the prophet did. And that's why his actions, even the ones we struggle to understand at first glance, were never cruel. They were deeply protective. Because in his heart, and through his every command, lived a love that always put the safety of others first. Small dangers can have great consequences. It's easy to overlook something that seems minor. A small insect, a quiet whisper, a subtle act. But in reality, the things we dismiss are often the ones that catch us off guard when it's too late. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, understood this deeply. He saw beyond the surface. He recognized the hidden threats that could grow if ignored, and he taught us to pay attention, not just to what's obvious, but to what lies beneath. Take the example of the black scorpion. Small in size, silent in its approach, but lethal in its effect. It could crawl into the bed of a sleeping child, hide in shoes, sneak into the corners of a home. One sting, and a life could be lost. No cries for help, no time to respond. A moment of pain could lead to a lifetime of grief for a family. And so, what looked like a minor threat, a tiny creature, was, in truth, a danger capable of immense harm. The Prophet's command to eliminate such creatures wasn't based on exaggeration or fear. It was based on experience, wisdom, and a commitment to protect life. He knew that prevention is stronger than cure. He knew that waiting for harm to strike before acting is a mistake too many make. That's why he acted proactively, not to destroy, but to preserve, not to dominate, but to defend. This principle applies far beyond scorpions. In our lives, we encounter countless small dangers, bad habits, toxic thoughts, harmful relationships, injustice in its earliest form. They may not seem like much at first. They might even come with a smile or disguise themselves as something normal. But if we let them stay, if we let them grow, they can poison everything around us. Corruption doesn't start big. Hatred doesn't begin as a fire. It starts as a spark, a word, a thought. And if no one calls it out, if no one stops it early, it spreads. That's why the wise don't wait until the storm comes. They see the clouds forming and they prepare. They act, they speak, they protect. The Prophet's life was a lesson in paying attention to the small things. Whether it was injustice in the marketplace, neglect in the home, or danger from the environment, he taught us that nothing is too small to matter, because even the smallest danger, when ignored, can bring about the greatest consequences. And this isn't just about fear, it's about responsibility. It's about being aware, being thoughtful, and being willing to act before it's too late. It's about understanding that sometimes the most merciful thing you can do is take action while the threat is still small. In a world where people often wait until the damage is done, the Prophet showed us a different way, a better way, a way where awareness, wisdom, and care come together to form real protection. We're reminded that every choice we make, every warning we heed or ignore, can shape the future. So don't underestimate the little things. Don't assume something small can't cause harm. Because in life, as in nature, it's often the quietest threats that leave the loudest scars. And that's why we must stay vigilant, because small dangers carry consequences far greater than their size. Balance between compassion and accountability is one of the most difficult yet essential principles to uphold. It's easy to lean too far in one direction, to either become overly forgiving to the point of enabling harm, or to become so rigid in judgment that compassion is lost. But true wisdom, the kind shown by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, lies in the ability to hold both qualities in harmony. The Prophet was the perfect example of compassion. He showed love to the weak, kindness to the ignorant, and mercy even to those who wronged him. His patience with those who insulted him, his care for orphans, his gentleness with animals. These stories have been told for generations because they reflect a heart overflowing with mercy. And yet, that same man was not afraid to hold people accountable when it was necessary. He did not let harm continue unchallenged. He did not allow danger to grow unchecked, even if it came in the form of a small creature or a seemingly harmless act. That balance is powerful. It shows that compassion doesn't mean letting everything go. It doesn't mean staying silent when someone is hurting others. It means caring enough to take action when needed. It means drawing lines, setting limits, and saying no when something crosses into harm. That is what accountability looks like. Not punishment for the sake of punishment, but correction for the sake of protection. When the Prophet ordered the killing of dangerous creatures like the black scorpion, it wasn't because he lacked compassion. It was because he had it. Real compassion doesn't wait for harm to strike. It steps in early, takes precautions, and sometimes makes difficult choices to keep people safe. The danger was real. The consequences of inaction were deadly. And so he acted, not out of anger, but out of care. That same principle can be applied to our lives. When someone we love is heading down the wrong path, we don't show love by pretending everything is fine. We show love by stepping in, having the hard conversations, setting boundaries. When a community faces a threat, whether moral, social, or physical, it's not compassionate to ignore it. True care requires that we face it, speak about it, and address it, even if it's uncomfortable. Accountability also means being responsible with the trust we've been given. Whether it's leadership, parenthood, friendship, or faith, each position of influence comes with the duty to protect others. And protection means watching for harm, calling it out, and doing what's necessary to prevent it. But we do it with heart. We do it with patience. We do it with fairness. The Prophet's balance between these two qualities teaches us that one without the other is incomplete. Compassion without accountability can be dangerous. It allows harm to continue. And accountability without compassion can be harsh. It forgets the human heart. But when the two work together, they create a force that heals, guides, and uplifts. This balance isn't always easy to find. It takes effort. It takes wisdom. But it's the kind of balance that builds safe homes, strong communities, and lasting peace. And in following the example of the Prophet, we see that it's possible. He didn't just teach with words, he lived it with every step. Because the true beauty of leadership, love, and faith lies in knowing when to be soft and when to be strong. Standing against harm is a form of love. That idea might feel unfamiliar in a world that often equates love with softness, silence, and acceptance of everything. But real love, deep, sincere, and protective, isn't passive. It doesn't sit back when danger approaches. It doesn't stay quiet when something wrong is unfolding. True love stands up, speaks out, and takes action, even when it's difficult, even when it's misunderstood. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, demonstrated this kind of love throughout his life. He didn't turn away when injustice appeared. He didn't stay silent when lives were at risk. Whether it was protecting the weak, speaking out against oppression, or even ordering the elimination of dangerous threats like poisonous creatures, his actions were always rooted in concern for the well-being of others. It was never about domination or power. It was about care, about shielding his community from harm. When he ordered the killing of dangerous creatures such as the black scorpion, many could have viewed it as a harsh decision. But look deeper. That scorpion posed a real threat. Its sting could kill a child in the night or bring unbearable pain to the elderly. The prophet didn't act because he wanted to harm another creature. He acted because he loved the people he was responsible for. He stood between danger and the innocent, and that is one of the truest forms of love there is. Imagine a parent seeing a snake near their child. Do they wait? Do they hesitate? No, they act instantly, not because they hate the snake, but because they love their child. That's the same energy the prophet carried. A leader's duty is to protect. A guardian's responsibility is to respond to threats. And in that moment, his decision wasn't about cruelty. It was an act of compassion through courage. Too often, we mistake love for letting people do as they please. We think we're being kind when we allow harm to continue, when we let toxicity go unchecked, when we watch danger unfold in the name of tolerance. But that's not kindness. That's avoidance. And sometimes avoidance is what causes the deepest damage. Real love is not afraid of confrontation when it's necessary. Real love steps in and says, "This stops here." Real love is willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of protecting others. The prophet taught us that. His entire life was a living lesson in standing up for what's right, not because it was easy, but because it was needed. When we love someone, we shield them, not just from physical harm, but from emotional, spiritual, and moral dangers too. That's why the prophet corrected people gently when they made mistakes. That's why he didn't ignore the dangers in his society. And that's why he acted swiftly when something could bring harm to those under his care. Because love without protection is incomplete, and protection without love becomes control. But when the two come together, they create safety, trust, and peace. We need that kind of love today, the bold kind. The kind that speaks up, the kind that draws the line, the kind that sacrifices comfort for the greater good. Because standing against harm, no matter how small or hidden, is not about power. It's about love that chooses to act. And sometimes the strongest expression of love is the one that dares to protect. True wisdom lies beyond surface judgments. That's something many people struggle to accept, especially in a world that thrives on quick opinions and instant reactions. We're conditioned to judge based on what we see, what we hear in a moment, or what fits our understanding. But true wisdom, real insight, requires something deeper. It demands patience, reflection, and the ability to look beyond appearances. And no one demonstrated this more clearly than Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. When he gave the command to eliminate certain dangerous creatures, like the black scorpion, it might have seemed harsh at first glance. After all, he was the prophet of mercy, the one who showed kindness to animals, forgave enemies, and treated all of creation with compassion. So how could he order the death of any creature? That's the surface judgment, the quick take. But if you pause, if you sit with it, If you go beneath that first reaction, you begin to see the wisdom unfold. The prophet's decisions were never random. Every choice he made was rooted in knowledge, in experience, in divine guidance. The black scorpion, though small, carried deadly venom. It was a threat not just to comfort, but to life itself. Especially in a time without modern medical treatment, its sting could mean death. So while some may look at that creature and see just an insect, the prophet saw the risk it posed to his people. His command wasn't born out of cruelty. It was a protective act, a wise act. This is what wisdom does. It looks beyond what's easy to see. It doesn't rush. It seeks meaning, context, and purpose. Most people judge based on what feels right in the moment. They make emotional conclusions, not informed ones, but wisdom waits. It considers. It asks, what's the bigger picture? And it answers from a place of depth, not reaction. This applies not just to actions like the prophets, but to how we live every day. We see a person act out, and we assume they're rude, without knowing what pain they carry. We hear about a rule or law and call it unjust, without understanding the context it came from. We're quick to call people good or bad based on a single moment. But if we really want to live with wisdom, we have to stop doing that. We have to pause, reflect, learn. Not everything is what it seems. The prophet's life was full of moments that appeared one way on the surface, but carried deep meaning underneath. His patience with enemies wasn't weakness. It was strength. His simplicity wasn't poverty. It was contentment. His sternness in some moments wasn't harshness. It was leadership. And yes, even his command to eliminate a harmful creature wasn't cruelty. It was love expressed through protection. True wisdom invites us to trust that sometimes the right thing is hidden beneath what looks uncomfortable. Sometimes the deepest acts of mercy don't come in soft words, but in strong decisions. And sometimes, to understand the truth of something, we have to be willing to look beyond our first impression. We live in a time when people form opinions with headlines, judge others with a glance, and cancel what they don't immediately understand. But if we want to follow the example of the prophet, we must rise above that. We must seek understanding, not just answers. We must look with both heart and mind. That's where wisdom begins. Because only when we look beyond the surface do we begin to see the truth.